This is the story of two Isaacs, separated in time by more than 100 years, one a hurricane, the other a meteorologist trying to forecast a hurricane at a time when that science was still in its infancy. I'll start with a few observations from last week's Hurricane Isaac, which took its time strengthening to hurricane status. In fact, while it was still a tropical storm, its pressure dropped to one of the lowest on record for any tropical cyclone that didn't have hurricane force winds. A study in 2007 showed that nearly all tropical cyclones with such a low central pressure were already hurricanes. Now here's a chart from that paper showing pressure versus wind for about 15 years worth of tropical storms and hurricanes in the Atlantic and Pacific. And notice the strong correlation. As the central pressure goes down, wind speed generally goes up. Now to the right of the line I just drew, winds are above hurricane force, that is above 65 knots. And now I'm going to put a dot on representing Isaac when it was a strong tropical storm, 976 millibars. Now at that pressure, almost all other storms were producing hurricane force winds, some even at Category 2 strength. Now here's one other Isaac-related story. This is a nighttime visible satellite image showing Isaac's clouds and some city lights. Normally, visible images are only possible on the daylight side of the Earth, but this image was captured by a very sensitive instrument on a new satellite that can detect objects even in extremely dim light. In this case, Isaac's clouds were lit by moonlight, not sunlight. Now to the other Isaac, a man named Isaac Cline, who was chief meteorologist at the Galveston, Texas office of the U.S. Weather Bureau from 1889 to 1901. There he was the central figure in the most deadly hurricane on record to strike the U.S., the Galveston hurricane of 1900, which hit 112 years ago this Saturday and killed at least 6,000 people. Cline was an excellent forecaster for his time. In fact, the National Weather Service still gives an annual award in his name. But one opinion that he offered about hurricanes, which were then poorly understood, haunts his reputation. Knowing that tropical storms occasionally hit Galveston, many residents wanted to build a seawall to protect the city. But in 1891, Cline wrote in the local paper that the idea of a hurricane doing serious damage to Galveston was an absurd delusion, and the seawall wasn't built. 9 years later, Cline's beliefs were destroyed, along with much of Galveston, as a Category 4 hurricane struck the city with sustained winds above 120 miles per hour and a 15 to 20-foot storm surge. The next day, Cline wrote, quote, "September 9th, 1900 revealed one of the most horrible sights that ever a civilized people looked upon. Nearly half the residence portion of Galveston had been completely swept out of existence. Where 20,000 people lived on the 8th, not a house remained on the 9th." Unquote. Isaac Cline's story is told in a fascinating book called Isaac's Storm, written by Eric Larson, an American author whose first newspaper job was with the Bucks County Courier-Times, right here in Pennsylvania. Paul Knight is up next with the extended forecast.